behind every story, there is a book. At the back of the room, you will find some copies of a path-breaking book on climate change. And you can actually get it signed today by the author, none other than Herb Simmons. And I'm very excited to present her. Herb Simmons is a long-time climate leader who's been at the forefront of addressing climate change for over 2 decades. Beginning when he served as Executive Director of the New Jersey Higher Education Partnership for Sustainability more than 20 years ago. His activism has achieved landmark results. Herb promoted the effort that resulted in the Montgomery County, Maryland, declaring the first climate emergency in the United States in 2017, setting a precedent that has inspired communities nationwide. Herb is the author of the book that you see here, The Climate Vocabulary of the Future, the first book focused on creating a new vocabulary to encompass all aspects of climate change. The book has been praised by noted climate author Kim Stanley Robinson as a science form, an inspiration prophecy, and it's also hilarious. He brings extensive government and non-profit experience as the former executive director of New Jersey State Planning Commission, where he created the state's award-winning Smart Growth Master Plan, and as former county administrator of the Atlantic County, New Jersey, making him one of the youngest county administrators in the nation. Currently, Herb is the co-founder of Healthy Planet Action Coalition, an international group committed to restoring a safe and healthy climate, and serves as host of the popular Climate Emergency Forum YouTube channel. He understands both policy challenges and communication needs essential to effective climate action. Herb is a very sought-after climate change moderator. He has moderated multiple panels on climate intervention at 2024 New York City Climate Week, and at London and Washington DC Climate Week earlier this year. So we are very excited to have him in person as our moderator for today's crucial discussion. Again, thank you for joining us. Please stay after the panel discussion and enjoy some wine and cheese. I would love to meet everybody, and the panelists would love to meet everybody as well. And hopefully you make some friends for life while you're here. And without further ado, over to you, Herb.
Thank you so much, Sunita. That was very kind of you. And, thanks so much to Elizabeth for your inspiring art. And it's such a treat to be surrounded by such creativity and richness. To Alka and the entire team at Blue Mountain Gallery, which I understand is 200 years old, I was told. Not 200 years in this location, but a lineage of 200 years, and we hope it lasts at least another 200 years, if not longer. We've got an incredibly diverse panel, you see alongside of me right here, and we've got an incredibly diverse audience. That is, people are still coming in right now. As you heard, we had over almost 150 people registered, and just about enough, well, I think we got it just about right to fill up almost every seat in the House. So let me welcome everyone to a conversation about perhaps the boldest, most controversial action that humanity has ever considered taking, and that is directly intervening to cool the climate at a regional or a global scale. As the climate crisis has intensified beyond what almost everyone anticipated or projected, and our efforts to limit emissions and remove excess greenhouse gases from the atmosphere remain profoundly, sadly, unsuccessful, even after 30 years, in fact. A small but growing number of scientists, activists, and climate leaders are looking for ways to directly cool the planet to stabilize and lower temperatures. Doing so would avoid the suffering and death of literally tens of millions of people, as well as stabilizing and restoring the ecosystems that we all rely upon. The well-intentioned opposition, however, to directly cooling the planet or the climate, perhaps even from some in this audience, is strong and vociferous, and again, very well-intentioned. An example just this month from an academic paper co-written by 25 climate scientists. And the title was Safeguarding the Polar Regions from Dangerous Geoengineering. This was the title, okay? The title demonstrates why many scientists and others argues itself that some have a dangerous bias. But beyond simply the title there, the authors in the abstract were quoted as saying, further research into these techniques, and there were 5 techniques they looked at to cool the and limit the loss of Arctic ice. And don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing their findings about how legitimate or appropriate it is or feasible to do this. But here's what they said. Further research into these techniques would not be an effective use of limited time and resources. It is vital that these ideas do not distract from the priority to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I wonder what future generations would say about a group of scientists who claim to have the last word and are basically saying, nope, nobody else should research it. We know enough. It's time to stop. Well, I'm actually a little speechless when I read this, so give me a moment to catch my breath. Again, this just came out. And that's why panels like today's panel, the panel on solar geoengineering research organized by the Chesapeake Climate Action Coalition, which happens to be led by Mike Tidwell, who's sitting right here, along with another wonderful group, the Alliance on Just Deliberation on Solar Geoengineering. They're doing a panel on Wednesday. I haven't checked to see if they're booked up, but if not, please go. It's Wednesday afternoon. I guarantee in 10 minutes of Mike, you'll know you haven't got nearly enough. And a panel that the Healthy Planet Action Coalition and one of my colleagues who I'm meeting for the first time in person after years on Zoom, Arian McKenna, will be in Brooklyn this Friday night, and we urge you to register for that as well. But that's why these panels are so critical, to begin to have this critical conversation and not squash it at the very beginning, so that all voices can be heard from the global south and the global north and wherever you all are from. And that's why, again, we're here today, and thank you so much for that. So what I want to do now is take off on what you started to do about asking people where they're from. I want to just quickly raise your hand. How many of you are working for an NGO? All right, about 7 or 8 thereabout. How many in the private sector? About the same amount, 7, 8. How many in government? Nobody. How many in government? And he raised his hand very hesitant because he's working in Washington, so we won't say any more about that. How many are retired or in transition? A couple, 3, 4, 5 or so. And how many of you, if anyone, is working directly in some aspect of climate intervention? Wow, look at that. My God. All right. Well, in that case, I think my next question, I may already know the answer. So basically, well, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, and I'm going to see where you fit in one of 3 boxes, okay? Please be honest. You won't hurt our feelings. So I'm going to ask you if you're skeptical of climate intervention, and maybe even opposed to it, or you're already in support of it, or you're really here because who the hell knows what it is, but you want to learn more, okay? And so at the end of the panel, we're going to ask the same thing and see if anybody changed your minds or so. And listen to this, if it turns out that there are more people in support of cooling at the end of the panel, you get to stay for the wine and the cheese. But please be objective. We'll let you take some home, but we won't let you talk with us. So let me see. So I hope somebody's taking count, or I'll take count here. So the first, raise your hand if you're somewhat skeptical or opposed to solar geoengineering. You want to find out. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 2. And 2 panelists, and a panelist. How about that? Shows you how balanced our panel is. All right. And that's, I guess I should say, climate intervention in the broadest sense. In that case, you see, I'm already negotiating with John. All right. So you're already in support of climate intervention in the broadest sense, including ecological restoration. Okay. Somebody want to count?
Does that include just research?
You just have to answer based on what I asked. I'm not going to try
To
to.
figure out which of the three.
Yeah, you have to figure that out for yourself. Okay. So is somebody counting, or we have it on the video, I guess? But it looks like most of you. And the third is you don't really have a well-formed opinion. You're really here to learn about it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm a little surprised at that, actually. We've got mostly supporters that are already here. But that's fine, and we're delighted to have you here. So with that, welcome again, and I want to turn it over for a video that will basically tell you a little bit about the Healthy Climate Initiative.
Turn the light. Get back.
Our big problem is that the ice is melting. And with all due respect to NASA and every respectable scientific institution in the world, it is melting far faster than the most advanced scientific institutions predicted 10 years ago. So in that sense, the statement the scientists were wrong is true. It's true. I mean, they were wrong in their prediction of how slow the ice would melt. So we are now faced with a more aggressive melting of the ice than ever before.
Our planet is changing faster than ever before, but amidst the challenges, there is hope. The Healthy Climate Initiative is working to restore a safe, livable climate for generations to come. We are a nonprofit organization bringing together scientists, innovators, policymakers, and communities. Our mission? To cool the planet, protect fragile ecosystems, and remove excess carbon from the atmosphere. We believe that regenerating the climate is not just possible, it's our shared responsibility.
We're working in Chhattisgarh together on other parts of the country in India to do large-scale plantation. In my background, you see Sundarban, which is the largest natural-grown mangrove forest in the world. We came here to investigate how we can generate mangrove forest or plant some mangrove forest that is declining over years because of climate change.
India faces the triple threat of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. By 2050, cities like Kolkata, Mumbai, and Chennai could be underwater. By 2070, parts of our land could become uninhabitable. The time for bold action is now.
It's tempting to just look at this and say somebody else is going to take care of this. It's very tempting to say that. If not me, who? If not now, when?
Because of this rapid temperature growth, warming, the glaciers are melting, Himalayan glaciers. So we have a solution to slow the melting, and we have started a trial to reduce this melting from last year.
HCI works on multiple fronts. We host interactive workshops with India's leading technical institutes to inspire innovation in climate interventions. We support field research to pioneer solutions for cooling the planet and preserving the cryosphere.
The solution is to try to replace that lost bright reflective ice, that function of being able to reflect sunshine. Got a thin shell of silica around, beach sand basically. It is hollow glass microspheres, but it floats. By the time we build up to something like 1 or 2 hairs widths of material on top of snow and ice, we can slow down the melt substantially.
At the same time, we bring our voices to global platforms like the UN climate negotiations. Our members are deeply rooted in the land, literally. Together with local communities, we plant native trees, restore degraded ecosystems, and support those on the front lines of the climate crisis.
অনেক ছোট ছোট সংস্থা যেগুলো অনেকে নিজস্ব যে সংস্থাগুলো অনেকে 5-6 জন মিলে 4-5 জন মিলে করেছে বা এরকম যেমন এই এক্স ক্যান ডু আপনাদেরই তো একটা সংস্থা খুব সুন্দর কাজ করে এরকম তো তারা যে কাজগুলো করে আমাদের সঙ্গে সেই কাজগুলো কিন্তু খুব ফ্রুটফুল এবং আমার কিন্তু একটা কথা সবসময় আমি সবাইকেই বলি যে আপনারা যে কাজটা করছেন সেই কাজটা আপনারা গ্রাউন্ডে এসে সবসময় দেখবেন। তো অনেকে যেমন ধরুন পুজোর সময় কেউ বলে 100 শাড়ি দেবো, এবার আমরা বলি যে আপনারা আমার সঙ্গে চলুন এবং শাড়িটা আপনি নিজে হাতে দেবেন। তো সেক্ষেত্রে আমার মনে হয়েছে বড় বড় সংস্থার থেকে ছোট সংস্থাগুলো অনেক রিলায়েবল বা এরকম মনে হয়।
We know change needs conversation. That's why we host webinars, publish newsletters and podcasts, and organize concerts to reach new audiences. We bring together scientists, grassroots practitioners, innovators, and young leaders to share knowledge and inspire action.
So we are proposing national cooling plan, thereby allocate enough sufficient research so that we get ready, the India is ready to manage the situation if that situation ever comes.
The climate crisis is the defining challenge of our time, but it is also an opportunity to shape a better future. Together we can restore balance, protect nature, and leave a thriving planet for the generations who will follow. Join us and be part of the solution.
Okay, we can have the lights back on. Well, now you know about the Healthy Climate Initiative on video, and now you're going to see the embodiment of the Healthy Climate Initiative in person with my friend and colleague who I'm about to introduce, Dr. Sumitra Das. Sumitra, who I've known now just for a few years. He is, as you know, the executive director of HCI, which he co-founded to regenerate a healthy climate and safeguard future generations. An engineer and a strategist, he has held senior leadership roles across the United States government, Fortune 500 companies, and global telecom standards bodies. He currently manages a multi-billion-dollar federal program, including a $10 million research lab. This is in addition to everything he's doing at HCI. A climate reality leader trained by former Vice President Al Gore. He leads global campaigns, Himalayan field trials, and policy advocacy. His guiding philosophy is begin with the end in mind. He holds degrees from George Mason and from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, where I also went. I am so delighted and thrilled to introduce you, and with both Sumitra and our other panelists, we're going to do something extremely unfair, and that is limit them to 10 minutes. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, all the SCI team. Thank you, everyone who helped behind the scenes. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever, some people are, some different parts of the world. I'm grateful for you are here because of this important conversation that we can have. Because of my experience in South Asia, particularly India, in the region, I'll outline the situation there in the ground, discuss why climate interventions must be discussed in the global arena, and what we are doing at HCI to help the situation. Imagine a situation, a small town in India during a brutal heat wave. It is evening, the temperature is still above the 40 degrees Celsius and 14 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity is suffocating. Power grids collapse under the waves. By morning, thousands. This is how Kim Stanley Robinson begins his novel, The Mystery for the Future. But for India, this is not distance ratio. It's a very real possibility if we fail to act. Already in 2024, India came dangerously close to this nightmare scenario. Delhi touched 49 degrees Celsius. 37 cities exceeded 45 degrees Celsius, which means with humidity, the real feel of temperature is over 55 degrees Celsius. 40 degrees Celsius means 114 degrees Fahrenheit. Now you can translate that 55 degrees Celsius.
More than 125.
I remember the formula. T by 5 equals T by 7, T by 9. I still remember that. But now consider this. Almost 90% homes in India do not have air conditioning. And 70% people, the workforce, is laborers working outside. Officially, the government reported 400 deaths because of this heat wave during March to June of last year. But unofficial reports are even higher. In many cities, west bulb temperature exceeded 31 degrees Celsius. In fact, I have calculated that's somewhere in 33 degrees Celsius in many places. And 2% of the country has crossed over 35 degrees Celsius, which is the certain limit for the heat. So think about what would happen if that temperature major cities would have crossed the 35 degrees Celsius, where the body cannot cool by itself. And that is what that Kim Stanley Robinson's novel discovery. So heat is not the only danger. Because of this high temperature, South Asian monsoon is getting destabilized. It's spinning much faster. Because with every 1 degree Celsius, the atmosphere contains 7 more moisture. So when the situation comes, you get something like rainbows, sudden outpour of water, so much so that poor infrastructures or weak infrastructure of the cities cannot accommodate that kind of thing. So you'll see in this year alone, about 3 million people were homeless in this year. In South Asia, 1 million people in South Asia were rescued during the flood. And I'm talking about what's happening now. In the meantime, the Himalayas, which is the water tower of Asia, are melting at an alarming rate. These glaciers feed mighty rivers of Asia. In India, Ganges, Ganga, Brahmaputra, the Indus. They are the lifeline of 2 billion people. And accelerated melting means what it means. In short terms, you get tremendous amount of flood. In some cases, what they call GLOF, G-L-O-F, glaciers lake outbursts of melting that can wash away some of the village that happened. And the long term, the water security of the whole region. Because as the glaciers melting, that means the water source of the country, which is water stressed anyway. The 40% of Indians do not have access to clean water, and that's a prediction by 2030. And the power, tidal power, agriculture, all those things. The IPCC has warned Eastern Himalayas to be ice free by 2050. Last but not the least, the 250 million people live within the 50 kilometers of Indian coastline, near the sea. And as the melting is happening, the water sea level is rising and creating inundation risk for all these people. In fact, for megacities like Kolkata, Mumbai, Chennai are at risk of getting underwater by 2050, and 20 million people will leave each of these cities. So to summarize, India is one of the most vulnerable countries with 1.4 billion people living in 1/3 or 1/4 of the size of the state. Agriculture depends on monsoon and infrastructure. What is our position? SCS stands on that we agree, yes, we have to do decarbonization, but it's hard to scale. Even if we meet this net zero by 2050, will overshoot, and Jim Hassel predicted by 2040 will exceed 22 degrees Celsius. Now we already see that what is happening today within 1.5 degrees Celsius, and one can imagine what could happen in 2 degrees Celsius or 3 degrees Celsius. So this is why we advocate two scenarios: rapid emission cuts, sequestration, carbon removal. At the same time, parallel investment in safe, science-based sunlight reflection methods. And there are two distinct classes of SRE. One is targeted interventions, localized near-term measures to protect vulnerable people and ecosystem in the near term, and in long term, the planetary preparedness, allocating resources for research and governance, so that if situation comes, we are ready, we have the knowledge and the readiness to accommodate. In other words, protect vulnerables now and prepare responsibly for planetary decision later. At HCI, we are advancing, and you already have seen this, some of it. There are 4 core initiatives. Glacier preservation trial that we have seen in Chotasigri, working with IIT scientists, and Bright Eyes initiative and piloting a project. We are promoting cooling policy and awareness campaign. We do 12 workshops across the country, and each workshop on the average of 200 people. So we are engaging students, academics, scientists, and policymakers, creating 2,000 activists, climate leaders across the country. We plan to have a global climate intervention conference next year in India, and followed by, across the country, a climate march, 3,000 kilometers of march from one part of the country. So, why does this matter? Because what we are doing, it links evidence, advocacy, and equity. Field trial, produce real data, workshops and marches, mobilize awareness and political will, community and indigenous partnerships, ground interventions in justice, and Global South leadership sharpens governance in the places most affected. So India is both at the epicenter of climate impacts and fulcrum of global solution. If we can mobilize awareness, evidence, and policy momentum here, we can shift the global debate on how humanity responds to the climate crisis. Thank you.
Oh, that was amazing. Thank you, Sumitra, for all your work. And I will say it, I hope that each of you will think about how you can, in your own large or small way, help and support the work that is being done by Sumitra and his colleagues here and in India. And with that, I'm delighted to introduce our next panelist, Mike Tidwell. On my left, Mike is not too far a neighbor of mine in the next town over in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and is a longtime co-founder, executive director, and leader of what is by far the most influential climate group in the metropolitan DC area. And he has influence throughout the country because of all he's accomplished in many, many years and decades of work. CCAN, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, has helped pass landmark clean energy legislation in Maryland and DC, block coal and oil in Virginia, worked with groups nationwide to push for a fair and effective carbon cap policy on Capitol Hill. And he's the author and filmmaker. His works include The Ravaging Tide, Strange Weather, Future Katrinas, and The Race to Save America's Coastal Cities. His documentary film, We Are All Smith Islanders, vividly depicts the dangers of global warming in Maryland and DC. His latest book is The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue. I believe you've actually brought some copies here with you. An extraordinary look at one street, again, just up the road from me, as a microcosm of the climate crisis. Mike has received lots of awards, but I think I've said enough so that you will know, as I do, that Mike is one of our most cherished and thoughtful leaders on climate, and what he's about to talk about in terms of the new role, I think it's fair to say, of CCAN in the solar radiation management or sunshine reflection space and field is a critically important and necessary one. I'm so happy you're with us today, Mike. The floor is yours, and keep it to 10 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Herb. Thanks everyone for being here to Blue Mountain. You just heard Sumitra describe extreme climate change in India. For many of us in the United States, for years and years, we thought of climate change as something somewhere else. Arctic ice melts, coral reef destruction in the Caribbean. I read Kim Stanley Robinson's book, Ministry for the Future, and those predictions in India are coming true. But I wrote this book because extreme climate impacts are happening on my block. This is a book about inarguable impacts of global warming right on my street, the 7100 block of Willow Avenue in Tacoma Park, Maryland. It's right on the border with Washington, D.C. I've been a climate activist for 23 years. 20 years ago when I started, our goal was we're going to switch to clean energy fast enough to avoid the worst impacts of global warming. We always tacked on that last part, to mitigate the worst consequences of extreme weather, whatever. And the reality is that clean energy revolution is happening. It's unstoppable. Every day around the world, human beings deploy a gigawatt of solar power alone, which is the equivalent of a large nuclear power plant of solar every day. And this is happening. The problem is it's happening too slowly. As Bill McKibben is famous for saying, winning slowly is the same as losing. And the reason I know that we're losing is because on my block, really starting in 2018, we started to see mass mortality of our large and old oak trees. I live in a neighborhood that reveres big trees. We name our streets after trees in Tacoma Park. And because of extreme rain in 2018, record-shattering rain for the entire mid-Atlantic, you can look it up, every state from New Jersey to South Carolina to Delaware to West Virginia shattered records for annual rainfall because the jet stream dipped, brought this enormous amount of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and triggered a mold in the soil in the mid-Atlantic that has devastated the roots of old oaks. We've seen mass mortality in the mid-Atlantic. And on my block, we've lost 500 years of tree growth just since 2019. So I write this book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue. It's not me saying it's climate change killing the big trees on my block. It's the city arborists, it's the public works folks. And as I started to research the book to tell the story of how climate change is killing our big trees, and not just here, but around the world, I learned that I wasn't the only one suffering from chronic Lyme disease. on my block because the winters aren't killing off ticks as they used to. 3 more other people on my block have battled Lyme disease. 6 members of my church a block away have had Lyme disease. The Eagle Scout in our local Boy Scout troop spent 2 years bedridden from Lyme disease. This is climate change and flooding, just enormous flooding in my neighborhood. So I wrote this book to say, look, climate change has gotten so bad that you could take a spinning globe and throw a dart at that globe wherever that dart lands on the planet, whether it's downtown Tokyo, the highlands of Ethiopia, or the 7100 block of Willow Avenue where I live. You could write a whole book about the impacts of climate change just in that little microdot. And I know that because I've done it with this book. But this book also has the subtitle, A Story of Climate and Hope on One American Street. I write about how, as we've seen the passing of big trees in my neighborhood, we've seen the coming of clean energy. In 2019, just a few years ago, there were no fully electric cars in my neighborhood. Now you stand on my block for 5 minutes and you hear what my neighbor Paula calls the faint harmony of angels. You know, some electric car coming down the street. We have the first gas station in America dedicated that switched entirely from pumping gas to charging electric cars. So I go into all this in the book, Extreme Impact, Transition to Clean Energy, and yet the trees continue to die. The flooding keeps happening. The impacts in India are still happening. We are in carbon overshoot. We all know that. 350 is the only safe level for carbon in the atmosphere. We're at 425. So therefore what? We've heard about, you know, direct air capture of carbon. Sucking carbon out of the atmosphere is expensive. The technology today is where solar was in the 1970s. It's just not here yet at scale. So then what? There's this whole conversation about reflecting sunlight away from the planet. I will say I do not support yet, you know, deployment of any kind of system to reflect sunlight, but I think we need to study it. We need to invest in serious computer models and limited but serious outdoor testing. We need to learn as much as we can. Will sulfur be able to reflect sunlight like volcanoes do, like Mount Pinatubo cooled the planet for 1 degree Celsius for an entire year in 1991. It erased a century of global warming in 1 year, one volcano. So that's what I write about in the book. I interview scientists at NASA and others, and I try to combine this whole picture, the microdot of my one block, where we're losing our tree canopy, to a global picture where could we create a solar canopy around the whole planet to artificially cool our planet temporarily while we complete the transition to clean energy. So that's what the book is about. That's why I'm here to engage in this conversation.
Thank you, Mike.
That was 9 minutes, I think.
I was going to say, you know, you were so fast that I need a minute to stall because I don't know what to do next. But I think it's fair to say that Chesapeake Climate Action, as I've heard you say, really gave a lot of thought, your board, staff, your constituents, in making this sort of transition to support for research.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yes. Yep.
And of course, I think it's also fair, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the hope is that other nonprofits and similar organizations who may now, for whatever set of reasons, and again, all well-meaning reasons, be against it or afraid of it or whatever, can open their minds and maybe even their hearts to looking at the need for this and the need for research. So with that, we'll go to our third speaker, John Scholl. John, it's so nice to meet you in person after working with you off and on for the past couple of years at the Eco Restoration Alliance. And John is the co-founder, along with Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, of the Eco Restoration Alliance, which aims to tackle climate change through restoration of depleted soils and degraded habitats. And he's also the founder of E-Nable, an online philanthropic community that creates free open source 3D printed prosthetic hands and arms for those with upper limb differences. John, you're a biological psychologist, you're a serial entrepreneur, you're an inventor with 18 patents, You're a theorist on complex adaptive systems.
Who wrote this?
I was going to say, I think we need like the rest of the evening to hear about all this, at least I do. And you're a digital community organizer. So your experience, you basically, I could continue on, but I've gotten to know you and your organization. As you know, we've had some of your active members on the Climate Emergency Forum to talk about the absolute need for eco-restoration and the many benefits that it can provide all over the planet. So I'm thrilled you're here with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to try to say things that are true, but I'm going to try to say them fresh. So one is, carbon dioxide is not killing anyone yet. I mean, it could become a real problem, but it's not a problem now. That's not what's killing us. Heat is killing us. Heat is killing people all over the world right now, and it's getting worse. I'm cautious, but I am going to argue that we should deploy machines that will carry heat away from the surface of the Earth. It will carry it away by packaging it into water vapor and moving it away from the surface, which is where most of us live, and move it up to the atmosphere. These machines will release bacteria and fungi, which will go up on those air currents, and which will cause that water vapor that they've already pumped from underground into the air to turn into clouds. Those clouds are going to turn into solar reflection barriers that are going to reflect light out into space. They're also, as they condense, going to release the energy they took away from the surface out into space. These machines are solar powered. They're self-reproducing. And they are plants. Biological plants. Photosynthesis-driven biological plants that move vast amounts of water from under the ground into the air, produce clouds, release heat out into space, and modulate our climate. We tend to think that deserts, for example, are caused by drought, but we now know that deserts cause drought, or rather that desertification causes drought. That when vegetation is eliminated by overgrazing or by deforestation, that the process I just described breaks down. The air conditioning system is broken. It stops raining. Therefore, what vegetation is left dries up. You get drier ground. Think about walking in your bare feet on dry ground in the summer versus on the sidewalk in the summer versus on grass in the summer versus on grass under the trees in the summer. We've just gone through 40 degrees. This is where 1.5 degrees is causing us all to panic on a global scale. I've just reminded you that plants and their built-in refrigeration system can produce huge impacts that we see every day. If we had a video, I'd show you some satellite video from the Earth of day by day, the sun comes out, the clouds appear. In the afternoon, the clouds sort of fade away, but they only appear where you've got vegetation. Every morning, there's the little puffs of clouds produced by plants. Those white clouds reflect the sun out of the sky. I think I've made my point. We live on a planet, we live on a living planet, which seems to have developed mechanisms for maintaining conditions conducive to life. And they do that by acting as a planetary climate control system. But our living planet is critically ill. And so the air conditioning is broken. And notice I haven't talked at all about carbon in this story, right? Everyone is saying energy transition, everyone is saying carbon, we need to draw down carbon. But the sad truth is that there's so much carbon in our oceans already that even if we stopped emissions 100% tomorrow, they're going to be releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere for centuries, hundreds of years. We're not going to bring down atmospheric carbon by energy transition or by carbon drawdown for centuries. We don't have centuries. On the other hand, how long does it take to turn bare ground into green ground? It takes maybe a year. And the effects build instantly from there, and the effects are immediately sensible. It gets cooler, it gets lusher. Some of what you've just planted is edible, right? It produces oxygen. It makes life better. And strangely enough, if this happened all over the planet, life all over the planet would be better and the cooling system would be repaired. This is the geoengineering which I think we need to deploy right now. It's powerful, it's proven, it's safe. It really doesn't need a great deal of help. And it could change everything. Now the problem is, it's a big fucking planet, and it's not in very good health. Fortunately, there are people all over this planet. And if each of us took responsibility for making the land we have access to greener, we could literally solve this problem in days. That's the good news. The bad news is we're not doing a very good job about it. It may well be that we do not do the obvious, the natural, and the proven thing in time, and we may need to break the glass and pull the handle and do something, frankly, untested that we better understand just in case. We have these panels on the wall. In case of fire, break glass. It's good to have them on the wall. Let's hope we never have to use it. The way to never have to use it is to use a little bit more fact and a little bit more good news, to use techniques which have only been discovered or rediscovered in the last decades, which allow you to speed up ecosystem restoration tenfold. So that a mature forest that would have taken 150 years, you can now stimulate in 30 years. There are all sorts of techniques for augmenting the soil, for increasing bioaerosol production, which can accelerate the ecosystem restoration process. We should do more research and more deployment of that, even as we do research and deployment on the dynamics of clouds and of what we may have to do if we fail to get our act together. But let me say, I hope we never have to break the glass and pull the handle. And the way to not break the glass and pull the handle turns out to have every desirable side effect you can imagine. These self-reproducing carbon drawdown air conditioning systems also feed people, maintain biodiversity, and do all sorts of things that we're not going to fully understand and appreciate for hundreds of years. But if we preserve them, our children will be around for hundreds of years to celebrate the good decision that we made. That's it. That's my story.
That's it? I mean, who is this guy? I didn't realize I invited somebody who had a completely different perspective. That was not my intent. I just wanted conformity. No, actually, we're thrilled. I mean, that was part of our intention, to get a diversity of perspectives and voices, because this is not a foregone or preordained conclusion about what needs to be done and even what the problem is, as John has pointed out. And I would encourage those of you, give a little plug to one of my groups, the Climate Emergency Forum on YouTube, and Facing Future as well. My colleague Dale here. We've had a number of programs We have Sumitra featured in one. We have some of your colleagues, Rob Dillette and others to talk about what John has only been able, obviously, since I only gave him 10 minutes, to scratch the surface of today. So with that, I'm delighted and happy to introduce our fourth and last panelist, Dr. Jyoti Singh, from up the, what is it, the number one? I haven't been in New York for years. The subway in Columbia. You're a post.
One and two.
One or two? All right. You're a postdoctoral scientist at the Columbia Climate School and at the NASA Goddard Institute of Space Studies. You've been studying land and crop models to better represent agricultural and ecosystem impacts under global warming, as well as under potential climate interventions. And you've had a variety of research looking at how stratospheric aerosol injection in particular could affect climate, agriculture, and water resources. So this is going to be a talk going to be about some of the impacts, not always very positive ones, about at least one of the techniques of climate intervention. We're so happy to hear you and have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making me part of this event and this extraordinary panel. I think there's a lot of things going on here, not just SRM or SAI, which is stratospheric aerosol injection. So just to say, I'm from India, and right now there are devastating floods happening in India, especially Indian subcontinent. And because there is a lot of mention of temperature, change in temperature, but there are several extreme impacts of rainfall, especially extreme rainfall. India Meteorology Department observed that in August, 25 out of 30 days were heavy to extreme heavy precipitation. Can you imagine, like 25 out of 30 days? And almost all the crops, so much infrastructure is being washed away in Punjab, in Himalayan states of India. So I am a scientist who works on improving crop models, not just for global warming, but also for climate interventions like solar radiation modification. So just to start with how I came to know about there's a term called solar radiation modification. I was doing my PhD in India, and in 2017, my supervisor introduced me about this term called solar radiation modification. And before that, I was doing a research in Himalayan state of India, where farmers were already replacing their apple orchards because the winters were turning less and less cold in Himalayas. The only reason that India can cultivate apples is only because of the height of Himalayas that makes it temperate region. And I did the field study, and they were already like kind of replacing the apple orchards with like fruits that require less chill, less cold, and also in some cases totally with vegetables. So it became a research question for me that what if I just kind of study what SRM will do, will it like save the orchards basically. And so I took some outputs from the climate models from a group called GeoMyth, and Meera is here. She's part of the group that I was postdoc for 3 years with Dr. Alan LeBrock and Dr. Lily Shaw. So I took some of the, especially temperatures. And I took the temperatures, and the result was, yes, the apple orchards were safe. But the thing is, I only took temperatures. And so the research became even more and more, not just in temperature, but when you, so just to start with, what is SRM? It's basically reflecting some more sunlight, which is already being reflected into space, some more sunlight through doing some kind of intervention. And they are all like taken from natural analogs, like he mentioned, in 1991 when Mount Pinatubo erupted in Philippines, there was a lot of millions of tons of aerosol injected in stratosphere, which is about 10 to 15 kilometers. And then that helped to reflect some more sunlight that cooled the planet for a couple of years around 0.5 degrees Celsius on average. And so that inspired to think of scientists. So what can we do it like manually? Can we send a spacecraft, an aircraft like about 15 kilometers, 20 kilometers, and inject aerosols that will reflect sunlight? This is how this idea came up. And so this is what I do. Just to say how are these techniques are studied. So one way can be like you have a lot of experimental data that is brought. Like you have like Mount Pinatubo or some other volcanic eruptions, but the Pinatubo is the biggest one. And then the other thing you can use is like just simulate these conditions that you have seen in climate models. So you simulate that by, for example, injecting some aerosols at tropical or mid-latitude or high latitude. This is a kind of experiments that scientists do to see injecting at which latitude will give you optimal, cooling and less and less maybe resource, and also more time for the aerosol to suspend in stratosphere, so that you have to at least you can optimize your injections. So what I do, I take the climate outputs, for example, temperature, rainfall, the diffuse versus direct solar radiation, maybe surface ozone if the climate models do simulate those, and then take as input in crop models and see how the agriculture is being impacted under the climate which is being modified due to these interventions. And another thing is, like in crop models, there need to be a lot of developments because a lot of crop models do not have the direct versus diffuse solar radiation differentiation. So because plants photosynthesize differently for direct radiation and diffuse radiation. And so this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to improve that, and there are some research that suggests that surface ozone concentration can also change under these interventions. So I also kind of develop use the experimental data to develop these capabilities in crop models, so that we have more and more robust crop models that can simulate much more realistic conditions in these climate intervention climate. Just talking about what research says, the limited research that we have, it is a mixed result. If you just talk about temperature, there are a lot of positive benefits, especially in tropical regions where the temperature is already above an optimal level on which the crop thrives, right? For India, for Africa, a lot of positive benefits. But if you talk about rainfall stories, that's why I started with the devastation of monsoon in India. It's very different. It can be, the overall mean is not that much like, if you see the mean rainfall pattern change around the globe, it's not that different, but it differs regionally for different countries, different regions. For example, just to say why there's a lot of heavy rainfall events happening in India, because India and Indian subcontinent gets this winter rainfall through the western disturbances, and it gets a summer monsoon through the summer monsoon pattern. What is happening under global warming? All these conditions and patterns are changing. The time they enter Indian subcontinent, the way they enter Indian subcontinent, we only cannot focus on temperature. We have to look at other factors as well, how they are changing. And that's why, as a researcher, I cannot say anything about implementation, but all I can say is we need more and more research. We need to pour more and more funding into this space, so that we'll have more and more evidence that what happens in these climate conditions. If these interventions needs to be implemented, we have more and more evidence to say what happens to this region, what happens globally. Because studies show that different crops, different regions will be impacted differently. India might benefit from reducing temperature, not sure about monsoon rainfall because climate models still cannot simulate it reliably. So there again more and more development needs to be done. Russia might not be a country which will benefit maybe for wheat. Yeah, so just I will start. Yeah, just to end, more and more research, more and more funding in climate intervention, more and more participation from Global South, from not just in policy but in science, in funding, in all kind of talks, which concerns climate intervention along with global warming, of course. And yeah, this is just what I had to say. Thank you.
One of the very promising research phenomena that's occurring recently is through, there's probably a lot of organizations, but one in particular called the Degrees Initiative that is focused on raising money to support research in the Global South. And they had a major conference, the first probably worldwide SRM, Climate Solar Radiation Management Conference, just in May in Cape Town that Sumitra attended and made lots of interesting contacts and learned a lot. So this is really critical. This can't be a global north, white man, burden kind of a thing. This has got to be everybody involved because it affects everybody, and the decisions need to be made with everybody in mind. Yes, go ahead.
So in this context, I just wanted to say we are doing a online event on Thursday morning about the same topic on stratospheric aerosol injection. What do we know, what we don't know, and what is the impact on monsoon? Because it's very important. And the panelist is all over the world. The best panelist I can think about, one from Cornell, one from India is the most prominent one, and then one from Bangladesh. And the moderator is from Cape Town, South Africa. Just wanted to ask, sorry.
No.
If you're interested, please,
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll send out a follow-up note to everyone who registered, telling them about this. And I also, a thought comes to mind, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but you and your colleagues and folks at CCAN have been working very diligently at the federal level to help preserve the little bit of research that is funded right now at places like NOAA, whose headquarters are literally across the street from where I live, and NASA and other agencies. And so hats off to you and all that. And I think you've had, I hate to say, at least so far, a little bit of provisional success.
Yeah, it's $10 million a year to basically study the baseline aerosols in the stratosphere. So they take planes with like 11 different measuring devices to measure, we need to know a baseline. What is up there? What kind of aerosols? How many? And what that does, if we continue to monitor aerosols in the stratosphere, if those change suddenly, we'll know some rogue nation is trying to engineer the climate. It's an early alarm system that protects us from bad actors, while hopefully we do real science and research to figure out potentially safe ways to gradually cool the planet.
Right. So, the floor is now yours. You've been waiting eagerly, I can see it on your faces, with all sorts of questions and accusations and challenges. I see everyone already. I just want to say we're going to go for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap up and have our refreshments and libations. And I know sitting in one place for a long time is sometimes a little challenging. So don't hesitate as the Q&A occurs to stretch or stand up for as long as you don't emit any embarrassing noises or anything like that. So with that, yes, and please introduce yourself and project your question, and it can't just be a comment.
Okay, Richard Castellana. I'm a member of this gallery, by the way. An implication of what you're saying to me is that the market will solve the problem of green energy. But we have to invest publicly, and nonprofits have to invest more on these other things that you're focusing on. I mean, planting trees and all that is a non-brainer. But how would you, if you could distribute money, a load of money came down to you, where would you put it?
That's a good question. Every night I dream about a load of money. And I keep having that same dream. It's yet to come true. Maybe after tonight, I don't know. But I'll just give a real quick answer in this, and I think I speak for all of us. None of us are calling for any diminution in money going to green energy. That's essential and has to occur, whether or not one thinks it's the part of the climate problem or part of it. It's a question of adding these additional dimensions. But let me ask any of my panelists if they want to otherwise respond to your comment.
Mike? I mean, yes, we need to invest more in clean energy, but I do think clean energy worldwide has reached a takeoff point where, especially solar plus batteries, is cheaper than any energy in the history of energy right now. But we have to continue those commitments and mandates around the world. We need a lot more than just $10 million a year for NOAA to test baseline aerosols. So I would put serious money, hundreds of millions, if not billions. I mean, the United Kingdom just put 70 million into various SRM modeling, testing, some outdoor testing as well. we need a lot more than that.
I want to ask John, if money came floating down to you in the Eco Restoration Alliance, what would your priorities be for distributing it and spending it for the biggest impact?
You know, I think we need a diversified portfolio. So I would like to see research on solar reflection management, but obviously I think that preserving and restoring healthy ecosystems is the best investment you can imagine, long-term and short-term. What's not understood is that it is a short-term way of addressing these issues locally, and it's a mid-term way of addressing these issues globally. And yet, I actually think that there's enough money going into green energy that you could allocate some of that money, because it's actually not going to cool the planet. It will reduce greenhouse gases. But we have a crisis right now, and that is not going to address the crisis.
Can I just say 1 million acres of California forests set aside for carbon offsets, 1 million acres have burned down.
Sure.
The point being, yes, we need to restore ecosystems, but we're on a planet that is rapidly destroying every ecosystem, even as we try to restore it.
Go ahead, John.
But we know how to do it right, and we know how to do it wrong. The forests that are going up in flames are typically monoculture forests that have been planted by the lumber industry for lumber. Healthy ecosystems are either immune to fire or don't burn because they are diverse, multi-species infrastructures with deep, moist soil maintained by inches or feet of ground level. You walk through a planted forest and you're mostly looking down narrow corridors of empty tree trunks. So it's not about trees, it's about ecosystems. But if you understand ecosystems, we know how to...
I guess it's just a matter of time, how much time we have to restore ecosystems all over the world on a planet that's just rapidly heating. Clearly we need to do that, but how much time do we have to do it would be the question I would have.
That might be the subject of our next panel. Sumitra, go ahead.
So we do that, reforestation, mangroves, and we use, the local species, not monoculture, work with the indigenous people, acquire thousands of hectares. But to do that, just to let you know, in India, finding lands is very difficult. It's growing, you're competing with the farming land because you're competing with the growth of population. So you're competing. So still we did that with the indigenous population. It took us just 2 to 3 years to acquire the land. Forget the part. The second part is that we have to go and do planting the part. And then getting this, let's say, carbon offset program, that is also takes a longer time because you have to go through this whole process. And we are not able to do this thing yet, even though we acquired the land 40 years ago. So this is the challenge we have. This is talking about in the South Asian context. And I agree with you, and we have a plan to work with this, but I agree with Mike in that sense that we need to have plan B. And not only that, we have to have plan C also. And which is the plan C I'm talking about, because even with SAI, which would take about 10, 15 years, we cannot think about 15 years before that. We have the plan ready, we have the research, we have the governance of this thing ready. Even I cannot afford, or rather we cannot afford 15, even 20 years of this dilemma. No, we do not know whether we will have a global agreement if the situation comes. We have a plan B, and plan B is a targeted, localized surface albedo enhancement techniques that you can cool the roofs. With some people who are under heat stress, do not have air conditioning. On the city level, if you can manage the heat. And that's what we think you need to also have a plan C, not only that plan B.
Okay, well, I don't, I was going to say, nobody's in, almost every other person has raised their hand. I am thrilled. I think I saw your hand first, but please forgive me if I don't call you in the order you raised. You put your hand up, we'll get to everybody. We'll try to give brief answers, even though these subjects require, extensive discussion. Yes.
Yes, and I will limit, I actually had questions for all the panelists, but I'm going to limit it to Mike. My name is Rita Soni. I work for a company based in India, creating rural jobs, trying to stem migration as part of the addressing climate issues. But my question for you, Mike, at the start of this UNGA week, I learned that China is the first country to meet the SDGs. And when you talked about your street...
Sustainable Development Goals.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, so many acronyms. When you spoke about your street and hearing, having the silent, what did you call it? Silent, the cars, the electric cars?
Oh, yeah, the faint harmony of angels.
The faint harmony of angels. Someone also in that meet described being like at a highway, and the red light turned green, and he thought he could walk because it was just so silent. And to me, what that says, and what you've all described, is the urgency and the magnitude, and that you do need a diverse set of answers to this. So really my question is, what can we learn from China? Because it does seem like they have diversified their solutions to all of this. Are they doing SRMs and SAIs? I'm not sure if these are the right acronyms. But yeah, it seems like there's something to be learned.
China is about to become the world's first electro state. They're electrifying everything, and they're going to export this electrification technology around the world. While the United States, apparently the federal government at least, wants to turn our country into like a Williamsburg, how they used to burn energy in the olden days. People can come, like you go to some Williamsburg colonial thing. So China, half of all cars sold in the world's largest automobile market in the world, which is China, this year will be electric cars. China is exporting solar panels all over the world. It's half of all renewable energy deployed around the world is in China now. In fact, earlier this summer, China was deploying a gigawatt of solar energy every 8 hours. So that's the equivalent of a large nuclear power plant of solar every 8 hours. So yes, China sees the future. They're going to own the future. They're going to sell the world electric cars. I was in Mexico City in July. These BYD cars, bring your own dreams cars, BYD, Chinese electric cars. We saw trucks, we saw sedans, advertisements everywhere. So yeah, hats off to them. As a country, we probably ought to pay attention and do more. Otherwise, we're going to be importing this technology from the world's leading electro nation.
Okay. Next question. And Dale.
Well, one thing I'm hearing.
Can you introduce yourself first?
Oh, I'm Dale Malkin, and I'm the host of Facing Future TV, which is a YouTube channel, and Herb is part of our team. Is the fact that land use mostly is going, our farmland, to grazing or growing food for cattle and sheep. And this is sort of the simplest solution almost that's available to us, and it's just not mentioned enough, is that if we stopped a lot of the animal agriculture, India has an enormous amount of cows, right? See Scotland is destroyed by sheep, all those moors, that's degraded land. That would be the most direct and immediate way that we could start restoring the climate. We have the land, we're just using it wrong.
I'm going to ask John to take that because I suspect you're very eager to respond to that.
Well, sure. Industrial cattle and sheep and all of those things are a huge, huge problem. They're also the solution. The Great Plains, the grasslands were all co-evolved with the ruminants who walked around with doing what ruminants do and stimulating the grasslands. We can use cattle. We can use grazing animals. Ideally, along with predators who will help them move the way they used to move. But in the absence of the predators, we still know how to move them through landscapes in such a way that they will restore the environment. That's the way it happened originally, that's the way it can happen again. There are other reasons why you may have concerns about beef, but it is still the case that big mammals are nature's way of creating healthy ecosystems all over the world.
It's a numbers game, though. 1.6 billion cows is not.
Right.
Okay, well, let me stop you there just because we've got lots of questions, and I don't think we're going to resolve the question about beef in the next 7 minutes, but maybe over cheese, which of course comes from. Who's next? Aria.
Okay. Yes, Aria McKenna, and one of the founding members of Healthy Planet Action Coalition. And I've got a question for you. First of all, I just want to say I so appreciate where you're coming from. I really
That sounds like
want.
the kiss of death, right?
What's that?
I said that sounds like the kiss of death.
I mean, I so want all of our solutions to be based in restoring nature to have the capacity to draw down enough carbon dioxide to help get us to safe levels. I mean, to me, that would be an ideal situation. I do have concerns that, according to James Hansen's most recent paper, we're emitting more not just carbon dioxide, but greenhouse gases through natural emissions at this point with methane loss and with the burning of, forest fires and all of that, I don't believe that we've got time to restore things in that way. But I would love it if we did, really would.
Okay.
And no, it's not just, I have a question.
All right, please, let's do that, yeah, because we need to move. Yeah.
So one of my questions has to do with the oceans. You had mentioned something about, I want some clarification as to where we're at with the oceans, because obviously we need that big, huge carbon sink to help solve the problem. And I'm curious, one, where we're at in terms of what the capacity is to draw down at this point in time with oceans, or whether we are just really emitting, like what is the status of the oceans in that regard?
Okay, I'm going to stop you there just because of time. I think go ahead, John.
If I could just get his favorite solution to that problem.
All right.
Yes.
Well, sorry. So the quick answer is that the oceans actually are in very bad shape, and that's the best argument for stopping carbon emissions. I'm less concerned about greenhouse gases than I am about the death of the oceans. If the oceans die, the life that makes oxygen dies. Half the oxygen we breathe comes from oxygen. It's gotten to the point where, after all, much of the carbon storage by the ocean is by living things. Their life is stopping. So the oceans are in serious trouble, not just because of the carbon which acidifies the ocean, but because of the pesticides and nitrates that run off the land attached to plastics that float at the surface layer and prevent all of the creatures who move between the surface and the depths from getting oxygen and reproducing. The oceans are in trouble.
Do you have a favorite solution to that?
Yeah, stop poisoning them with plastics and pesticides and toxins, and it can rebound very quickly.
Okay, next question there. Yes.
Easy peasy.
I mean, I relate to the concerns that you've raised. I mean, one about, so my name is Divya Gupta. I'm an assistant professor at Binghamton University, and I work on the issues of climate change and climate adaptation. I'm originally from India, and I grew up in the Himalayan region, and I also like to work in the region. So I'm familiar with some of the stories about recent rain and the cloudbursts that you all brought up. And wanted to mention that, going back to your point, that my team, we've been working on looking at the impacts of large-scale plantations, and we found that, especially in the context of the global south, unless we don't target the drivers of deforestation, the drivers of land degradation, there's not much success that we can attain through plantation, because studies have shown that these plantations, the success rate is really low. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing, when it comes to climate change, especially in India, in the context of Himalayan region, what we've seen is that, yes, I'm not denying that climate change is not a problem, But the problem in the Himalayan region is that it's unchecked infrastructure expansion. So when we have like these heavy rainfalls or floods, because of these like unchecked infrastructure expansion, the magnitude of the damage that is caused is crazy. So no matter how much, the stratospheric injection and all these interventions we keep doing, it wouldn't make any difference unless there is no, system in place to ensure that there is no unchecked expansion in the region that is happening. I mean, Himalayas are the youngest mountain in the whole world, so they can't, because it also like has a lot of tourist attraction and all those things. The infrastructure is like growing, the resorts, but there are highways that are being constructed.
Okay.
So yes.
So basically, panelists, particularly our Indian colleagues.
Just one last point I wanted to
Okay.
make. What is really interesting about the way climate change is interpreted in the context of the global north and the south is that, especially going back to the Himalayan region, the climate change is like, because of these disasters that are happening, is used as a way to deflect from the responsibility that, that yes, we need to do something to make sure that we are not expanding so that these disasters are causing more problems. But in the north, there's this like sense of denialism, right? So there's unchecked climate risks are happening, but there's no action. So that's something which is really unique about the way climate change kind of plays out. So I just wanted to lay these things out and hear what you guys have to think about.
So my take would be you're right. And the question is that okay, there are two, there's multiple variables here making the complex problem more complex. Climate change is happening, your rainfall and water scarcity is increasing. How do we address that part? And then there's the question is, because it is happening, already the poor infrastructure and growth of infrastructure is worsening the situation, right? We are addressing one part of the problem because this can go, it's not in your hand, you have to stop this part. Whether you can stop the growth of this part, but this is going to continue doing that, and it's going to worsen and worsen the situation.
It's so counterproductive.
But it's not a causal relationship. One is not causing the other. It's a separate problem. Impacts is happening. The impact is getting worsening because of that. We definitely understand that part. It's not that we do not, but our focus is on how do we stop that part. But
Jody, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I want to add to my personal experience. So I come from a farming family, and I also have lived in Dehradun, which is part of a Himalayan state. So there's cloudburst in Dehradun, which is so, like, it's not, people will think how is it possible, because that was not the place where the cloudburst happened. But since I have seen or listened to the stories of changing Dehradun, like how people have constructed houses, right, where there were first streams of like water streams, and because all the infrastructure, dams are built there, and constructions are being done in places where there should be like water flowing, and on this place of if there is heavy rainfall, it should go somewhere, right? So first of all, secondly, in my village there is, so in my village is near Ganga, and it has a lot of different types of soils. So one is called clay soil. So and there are lower lands. So what people used to do, they used to plant their rabi crops. Rabi are winter crops, and which they do not require a lot of rainfall. And there was community kind of farming, that because these lands were away from the villages, people will go, like if there are 10 farmers, one person will go every night and they will guard the farm. So it's community farming. Now because there is money and there is a lot of infrastructure happening, people have converted those to rice paddy fields, right? And it's a lowland, and also it's a clay soil. If there is and it's near Ganga. So if the flood happens, you are basically ruining the area which is not supposed to be a cropland. It's only supposed to be a cropland in winter season. So I definitely agree with you. This is not isolated things, they happen all together. And if one thing is, if you are looking for a solution, you have to also look for all the other reasons where you're lacking, then only the solution will work. Otherwise it will not work. So I totally agree with you.
All right, one last question and then we're going to wrap up. I've got two hands. Can each of you limit your question to 20 seconds? Go ahead.
Just want to say I'm working in India, in Eastern Uttar Pradesh. Been working there for the last 16 years. what we've noticed is since the development of mega cities like Dubai in one's undeveloped areas, we're seeing possibly a fossil fuel city like Dubai fueling precipitation coming from the west. So never has India been receiving rain from the west. We always get monsoon from the east. Now we're seeing rainfall coming in from the west. So we have to look at what's going on in the development sector in the Middle East, which is affecting all these things too.
Everything's connected to everything else. And sometimes it takes us a while to figure it out. Well, very last question. Yes.
I think it might be appropriate. So to maybe the whole panel, maybe I'll focus on you two. What is your optimistic yet realistic view, the story you would tell about how the world's political institutions get from where we actually are now to restoring our ecosystems and our climate at scale?
Well, since we only have 30 seconds, that's such an easy one. You got 10 seconds for each one of us. Now, just do your best to keep it short and to the point.
Look, governments often, not always, but often respond to people. And all over the world, most people are denying that climate change is happening in one way or another, and so governments aren't doing enough. But I think that once we reach a point, maybe in not too distant future, where we have things like synchronized global breadbasket collapse, you know, where you can't grow wheat in Argentina or Kansas or Ukraine or Central China all at the same time. I think 35% of all the world's calories come from those areas. Hunger